Bursting onto the scene in 2002, Ring of Honor sought to shake up the American wrestling business in the wake of a boom period centered around attitude and larger-than-life characters rather than in-ring prowess and sportsmanship. Word spread around the tape trading scene, and the combination of junior heavyweight, classic British style, and the take-no-prisoners attitudes of Japanese strong style and King's Road style wrestling saw ROH carve out a sizable niche, back when seemingly every indie promotion on the scene was trying to fill the hardcore void left by ECW. Before long, ROH was a byword for quality, where 60-minute matches weren't out of the ordinary, and work rate was the order of the day. The indie scene itself flourished, and Ring of Honor led the way, alongside contemporaries PWG and Chikara. ROH's top stars became the hottest commodities on the scene, but before long, the best of the best were plucked by TNA and WWE. It's not a stretch to say that if it wasn't for Ring of Honor, then people likely wouldn't care half as much about NXT, such as the abundance of past ROH stars in the black and yellow brand's history. Regardless, every good wrestler needs to fight for a top prize, and Ring of Honor is no exception, establishing the Ring of Honor title in July of 2002, with the belt gaining world title status in 2003 when it was defended outside of the USA for the first time. Since then, 27 wrestlers have held the Ring of Honor World Championship over 33 reigns, with reigns often going past the 200-day mark and higher. With such long reigns and few instances of title hotshotting, the Ring of Honor World Championship was at one point one of the most prestigious in wrestling, and if you could lay your hands on it, then a fruitful career was as good as assured. Naturally though, some champions did a little better than others, as you're about to find out. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is every Ring of Honor World Champion ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 27, Kyle O'Reilly. Quickly making a name for himself by using his opponents' heads like footballs, Kyle O'Reilly had his greatest success in Ring of Honor's tag division, teaming with Adam Cole as Future Shock before joining up with Bobby Fish as Red Dragon, where they reigned as Ring of Honor tag champs on 3 occasions. But it was the love-hate relationship with Cole that would underpin everything O'Reilly did in the company. After Future Shock split, they had many intense battles, but later patched things up. After joining Bullet Club, Cole turned on O'Reilly and cost him the ROH title in a match against champ Jay Lethal in September 2015, before destroying O'Reilly's shoulder in brutal fashion. O'Reilly stayed away from ROH for the next 11 months, but when Cole lifted the title for a second time at Death Before Dishonor 14, O'Reilly came back to ruin the celebrations and stake a claim for the gold. A story 8 years in the making, Cole and Kyle beat each other to a bloody pulp, and Kyle lifted the belt at Final Battle 2016. But his contract was about to expire. At an impasse, O'Reilly dropped the ROH title back to Cole at Wrestle Kingdom 11 after only 36 days as champ. Number 26, Low-Ki. The man with the deepest voice in pro wrestling, Low-Ki is a lively character to say the least. Known for working stiffer than your dad after a couple of Viagra, and for sometimes being a little, difficult to work with, Low-Ki embodied ROH's strike hard, bump harder mentality when the promotion was born in 2002. Regarded as one of the founding fathers of Ring of Honor alongside Bryan Danielson and Christopher Daniels, Low-Ki has the distinction of being the inaugural ROH champion when he defeated Daniels, Spanky, and Doug Williams in a 4-way Iron Man match in July 2002 at the appropriately named Crowning a Champion event. However, Ki's reign was short and fairly uneventful, lasting for 56 days until dropping the belt to Xavier, and in hindsight, its greatest purpose was to get Xavier and the Prophecy over as heat magnets. Ki did manage a successful defense against AJ Styles in this time though, and stayed with Ring of Honor until 2006, save for a brief hiatus in 2004, but never again held gold in the company. Number 25, Xavier. In its prime, Ring of Honor was seen as a wrestling factory, with the majority of its biggest stars going on to conquer various promotions around the world. The same, unfortunately, cannot be said about Xavier. Easily the least known of all of ROH's champions, Xavier was there from night one and soon established himself as one of the promotion's most despicable heels when, with the help from Christopher Daniels, he cheated to win the ROH championship from Low-Ki. As champ, Xavier joined Daniels' big heel stable, the Prophecy, but promptly played second fiddle to the Fallen Angel despite being the champion. The Prophecy's insistence of disregarding the Code of Honor made them the most hated group in the company, and due to their extensive rule breaking, Xavier managed to keep his mitts on the title for 182 days, beating AJ Styles, Jay Briscoe, and Paul London during his reign. But all things must come to an end. Xavier dropped the title to Samoa Joe in March of 2003, and had several stints in and out of the company, with a final return against Jay Lethal scheduled for March 2020 before COVID cancelled ROH's plans. Xavier sadly passed away in August 2020 before he could make his comeback. Number 24, PCO. The story of PCO going from new generation tag fodder through years in the wilderness and back again, transforming into a must-see attraction on the indie scene is a true feel-good story. Formerly known for either hanging out with the Mountie or wearing a crap eye patch and battling Bret Hart, Pierre Carloulet's metamorphosis into the freakish Frankenstein's monster that is PCO was a breath of fresh air, and seeing him get his chest turned into hamburger meat by Volta endeared him to the indie wrestling diehards. But ROH World Champion? No one could have predicted that. Toppling the undefeated ROH for the title at Final Battle 2019, PCO became the oldest ROH World Champion in history at 51, and while the real-life story was phenomenal, PCO as champ did feel like a square peg in a round hole. Considering the fact that Villain Enterprises stablemate Marty Scurll was hotter than magma at the time, most assumed the villain would end up with the strap despite being ROH head booker, but were pleasantly surprised when PCO brought home the gold. A quick thank you title run ensued, PCO dropping the title back to ROH after 78 days. Number 23, Homicide. The build to Homicide getting his hands on the belt was one of the greatest in ROH title history. Frustrated after losing opportunities for both the world and pure titles and disrespected by ROH management despite being one of their fiercest soldiers in the war with CZW, Homicide was quite simply pissed off. Clashes with Commissioner Jim Cornette cemented Homicide as ROH's biggest anti-hero, and he declared that if he didn't win the world title by the end of 2006, then he would quit the promotion. Fast forward to December 23rd and Final Battle 2006, where Homicide faced world champ Bryan Danielson in New York. After surviving attacks from Adam Pearce and Shane Hagedorn, Homicide overcame the odds and crumpled Danielson with a stiff lariat to finally win the big one in front of a hometown crowd. A huge moment and a fitting payoff to a massive story, but it was a few years past due. This Ring of Homicide run was essentially a thank you to the notorious 187, and after 56 days it was over, with him having successfully defended against Chris Hero, Samoa Joe, and Jimmy Rave. Homicide was doing double duty with TNA and would join them full-time in 2007 due to a conflict of interest over ROH's pay-per-view deal. Number 22, Michael Elgin. The 19th Ring of Honor World Champion Michael Elgin is a beefy fridge of a man, but his relationship with ROH can best be described as complicated. For the longest time, it seemed like Elgin would never land the big one, having come close against former champions Davey Richards and Kevin Steen, while failing to beat Adam Cole in a tournament for the vacant title, as well as unsuccessfully challenging Kazuchika Okada and AJ Styles for the IWGP title at War of the Worlds. But at Best in the World 2014, Elgin would finally topple long-term rival Cole for the title after the best part of 4 years with the company. Things soon went sour. Backstage disagreements, clashes with management, and a visa issue all conspired against Elgin, with Big Mike dropping the title to Jay Briscoe after a shortish 76-day reign. It also didn't help that a large section of the fan base, and allegedly a chunk of his peers, turned their back on Elgin, and when the dust settled, his legacy as champion is more famous for the backstage bollocks that surrounded it than for any of the actual wrestling. Number 21, James Gibson. Every wrestling title you can think of, every single one, they all have one thing in common: transitional champions. It's a tradition as old as the wrestling business itself. Take the belt away from your champ, put it on a credible member of your roster, then transition it to your next big champ when the timing is right. Ring of Honor have only had a handful of transitional champs across all their titles, but the most notable was James Gibson, who held the ROH World title for 36 days in 2005. Bridging the gap between outgoing champ CM Punk and the American Dragon Bryan Danielson, Gibson managed multiple defenses of the gold in his short reign, itself occurring during a quick 8-month stop in Ring of Honor between WWE runs. Gibson's time with the gold can be seen as a thank you of sorts. His time in WCW was short and didn't amount to much, while in WWE it was clear that he wouldn't graduate beyond the cruiserweight division. Plus, having had a decent run in WWE, he had enough credibility to give something of a rub to ROH's homegrown stars, while many new sets of eyes were on the product in the wake of the Summer of Punk. Number 20, Jerry Lynn. Considering that Ring of Honor was initially seen as a spiritual successor to ECW, then it should come as no surprise that many of Paul Heyman's most popular stars would crop up to work there. Raven memorably feuded with CM Punk, Lance Storm tried his luck with Daniel Bryan, but Jerry Lynn would arguably have the most success. Arriving in ROH full-time in 2008 at 45 years old, having previously done a few one-offs in the past, Lynn proved that he could still go in the ring, seamlessly slotting into the roster. After several months as a regular competitor, Lynn defied all convention by winning the ROH World title at Supercard of Honor 4. The only problem was who he beat, Nigel McGuinness, ending the Englishman's reign at 545 days. Really, ending McGuinness's reign should have been used to make a new star, rather than for the feel-good moment of Jerry landing the title. Like others on this list, Jerry's 71-day run as champ was something of a thank you, as well as being timed to coincide with the release of Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler, whose protagonist, Randy the Ram Robinson, bore a striking resemblance to the former WWE Light Heavyweight Champion. He was overlooked in WCW and WWE, while his ECW title reign came when ECW was imploding. It may not have the legacy of a Danielson or a Joe, but who could deny the nicest man in wrestling one last hurrah? Number 19, Matt Taven. Just about every wrestling organization ever has had a Marmite World Champion that divides opinion. In WCW, it was Jeff Jarrett. In ECW, it was just incredible. In WWE, well, you can take your pick really. And in Ring of Honor, there was Matt Taven. What all these champions have in common is simple. They just didn't feel like top guys at the time of their reigns, and arguably did little in drawing eyes to the product. While Matt Taven is great in the ring and an excellent natural heel, to many he just wasn't in the same league as past standard bearers, with Taven eliciting go-away heat from sections of the ROH fanbase. But still, based on ability alone, Taven was a fine champion, winning the title in a three-way ladder match at the historic ROH New Japan G1 Supercard in Madison Square Garden, and holding the belt for 174 days. Problem was, this was viewed as a terrible choice. New Japan was kicking ROH's ass in the eyes of indie fans, and everything was set up for Marty Scurll to be the next big thing and usher in a new era of ROH. Pulling the trigger on Taven felt like a backward step, especially as he had been far hotter a year earlier. Number 18, Christopher Daniels. One of the founding fathers of Ring of Honor, one of the most celebrated names on the indie scene for the best part of 20 years, the first major heel of ROH, the fallen angel Christopher Daniels, won the Ring of Honor title about 15 years too late. Capturing the title at 2017's ROH 15th anniversary show, Daniels with the title was, yes, a thank you run, but one that very few Ring of Honor fans had issue with. Heading into the 15th anniversary show, Daniels was on his own against Bullet Club ROH branch leader world champion Adam Cole after Addiction teammate Frankie Kazarian turned his back on him to join BC. But swerve! Kaz joining Bullet Club was all a ruse, and at the pay-per-view, Daniels overcame everything Cole threw at him, nailed a Styles Clash and 3 BMEs, and lifted the title. Daniels' issues with Bullet Club would continue, and eventually BC member Cody would topple him for the title after 105 days as champ, after successful defenses against Dalton Castle at Supercard of Honor 11 and Jay Lethal and Cody at War of the Worlds. A solid enough run for a true ROH legend. Number 17, Roosh. The founder of LIJ with La Sombra Andrade Almas, Roosh is a two-time ROH champion and at the time of recording is the current reigning champ. Coming to ROH as part of the promotion's working relationship with CMLL, Roosh was presented as a huge star from the off, reigniting his war with Matt Taven that had waged throughout Mexico. When Taven finally got his hands on the Ring of Honor title, we all knew it was only a matter of time before Roosh stepped up, and El Toro Blanco did just that at Death Before Dishonor 17 in September 2019. But seemingly as soon as Roosh gained possession of the belt, he lost it to PCO. Speculation rife about whether Roosh would be staying with ROH or moving on elsewhere. All doubt was soon removed when he introduced La Fashion Ingobernable to ROH to help him fight Villain Enterprises, and he became a two-time champion when he defeated PCO and Mark Haskins at Gateway to Honor in February 2020. Roosh is a hard one to place really. On one hand, he's part of a small club to have held the ROH title on more than one occasion, but on the other, his second run has been severely impacted by COVID-19 as the entire wrestling industry ground to a halt. Number 16, Eddie Edwards. Edwards. As the only man so far to achieve the Triple Crown in Ring of Honor and Impact Wrestling, it's strange to think that at one point many wrote Eddie Edwards off as the Marty Jannetty of the American Wolves. Ring of Honor clearly didn't agree, crowning Edwards as the inaugural ROH TV champion, defeating tag partner Davey Richards for the title in 2010. ROH were grooming Edwards for a sustained singles run, and in March 2011 he shocked the world by defeating ROH World Champion Roderick Strong at Manhattan Mayhem 4. From branching out as a solo wrestler through winning the TV title and eventually the ROH title, it all felt a bit rushed. And while no one would question Edwards' ability, the title reign itself did divide fan opinion. From an in-ring perspective, Edwards' reign was great, putting on stellar defenses against Christopher Daniels, Roderick Strong, and Chris Hero. But unfortunately, Eddie was still clearly in Davey's shadow. A chunk of the ROH audience scratched their heads at how Eddie lifted world gold first, at a time when many considered Richards to be one of the greatest wrestlers on the planet. Edwards had a 90-day run with the gold before he dropped the title to, you guessed it, Davey Richards. Number 15, Cody. After Cody Rhodes left WWE in 2016, he published a list of what he wanted to achieve and who he wanted to face in wrestling, with several prominent Ring of Honor stars listed on it. True to his word, Cody arrived in ROH and instantly became public enemy number one, attacking authority figures, fan favorites, and commentators. Before long, Cody joined Bullet Club, and with BC being the hottest thing in the business, it made sense to get the ROH title back in their clutches, with Cody defeating Christopher Daniels for the belt at Best in the World 2017. With a reputation as a WWE guy, Cody reveled in the sneering bad guy role, but he also brought an old school workhorse mentality to his defenses, no surprise considering his lineage. He even swapped out the ROH title belt for a literal Ring of Honor as a young MJF took notes. However, Cody's reign did divide fan opinion. Some saw this as a great opportunity for ROH to finally regain relevance after Jim Cornette had buggered things up in 2012, whilst others never accepted the outsider Cody and cried that ROH were putting all of their eggs in one Bullet Club-shaped basket. Regardless, Cody was a fighting champion, and after 175 days, he dropped the title to one of the names on his wrestling bucket list. Number 14, Dalton Castle. At times, ROH has been criticised for its wrestlers having a lack of character, but no one in their right mind could levy that argument against Dalton Castle. Equal parts Goldust, Ric Flair, and Freddie Mercury, Castle stuck out and instantly became one of the hottest acts in the promotion, and this was no mean feat at a time when Bullet Club were reigning supreme. Dalton soon caught the ire of Bullet Club's Cody, with the ROH champion claiming he'd beaten everyone in ROH only to be met by the Boymaster himself. The two engaged in a short but vicious feud, culminating with Castle taking the title from a bloodied Cody at Final Battle 2017. The problem was that ROH waited far too long to pull the trigger on Castle as champ, a chronic problem that has plagued them, especially after co-founder Gabe Sapolsky left in 2008. Castle was also absolutely knackered and dealing with a lingering back injury. Despite fighting on through the pain, the writing was on the wall from day one. After 7 defenses and 197 days, Castle dropped the title to Jay Lethal and is yet to regain his pre-title momentum. Number 13, Roderick Strong. The Messiah of the Backbreaker was a mainstay of Ring of Honor for the best part of 14 years. His hard work, tireless performances, and crisp in-ring ability earning him the nickname Mr. ROH. Roddy had sniffed around the title scene numerous times, most notably chasing world champion Bryan Danielson to no avail in 2006. Come 2010, world champ Tyler Black was on his way out of ROH and into the waiting arms of WWE. Strong was the obvious choice to beat him for the title, doing so at Glory by Honor 9. Under the watchful eye of Truth Martini, Strong was a detestable heel, not averse to breaking as many rules as he did backs in order to keep his mitts on the gold. To some, a measure of how good a champion is comes as much down to challengers as the champion itself. For Strong, he had a host of fan-favourite babyfaces chasing him for that title, such as Christopher Daniels, El Generico, Davey Richards, and Jay Briscoe, to name a few. Strong eventually lost the title to Eddie Edwards and would never hold the gold again, despite never being too far far from the title picture. Number 12, Davey Richards. When Sinclair Broadcasting and ROH joined forces in 2011, they both agreed that Davey Richards was the future star of the organization. Hailed as the best wrestler in the world thanks to his run with Eddie Edwards as the American Wolves and solo matches against the likes of Bryan Danielson, every man and his dog could see that Davey Richards would hold ROH gold at some point. Naturally, Ring of Honor waited too long. Richards beat partner Eddie Edwards for the title at Best in the World 2011, just in time for the ROH weekly show to debut across Sinclair's network. But as mentioned earlier regarding Edwards, people scratched their heads as to why he had the belt before Davey. Richards made up for lost time and held the belt for 321 days, but only managed 11 defenses, spending more time focusing on tag action rather than defending the world title. His defense against Michael Elgin at Showdown in the Sun was absolutely fantastic, but the rest of the reign was regarded as a disappointment because of the lofty expectations thrust upon Davey as the new face of ROH. But a long reign was what the belt needed, adding a little extra prestige before Davey dropped the title in May 2012. Number 11, Tyler Black. Long before he became WWE royalty, Tyler Black was wowing the indie scene, debuting in ROH aged only 21. While fans didn't take to Black straight away, his work with Jimmy Jacobs in The Age of the Fall earned rave reviews, and soon Black was heralded as the next big thing in ROH in the wake of major stars like Bryan Danielson leaving. Early 20s, excellent in ring with no glass ceiling, Black was destined to become Ring of Honor World Champion and usher in a glorious new age of ROH. Predictably, ROH waited too long to crown him. Black landed the title at the 8th anniversary show in April 2010, but in hindsight, he should have been the one to end Nigel McGuinness's reign a year earlier. By the time Black finally became champion, WWE had taken notice and during his reign signed him to a developmental deal. The ROH crowd got wind of this and Black became the biggest heel this side of CM Punk, threatening to take the ROH title with him when he left. Black was eventually defeated for the gold on his last night in the company by Roderick Strong. A very good reign, but again, a little too late. Number 10, Jay Briscoe. While casual fans may know of the Briscoe brothers for their record-breaking 11 ROH tag title wins, older brother Jay is also an accomplished singles wrestler, being one of the 5 men to have won the ROH World title on more than one occasion. A mainstay from the very first ROH show, Jay came to be a dependable hand for Ring of Honor, yet his win over Kevin Steen for the world title in 2013 was still somewhat of a shock. As champ, Jay stuck to his guns. Whenever he got in the ring, he delivered. And when he spat a promo, you believed he was legitimately going to break someone's legs. However, Jay became the first and only wrestler in ROH history to forfeit the title because he was injured. Or he wanted some time off, or his contract was up, depends on who you ask. Briscoe later came back ticked off, declaring himself the real ROH champion as no one beat him for the strap, unsuccessfully challenging ROH champion Adam Cole to a winner-takes-all match. Jay eventually got a second run with the gold in 2014, defeating Michael Elgin for the belts. This run was properly fleshed out, including defenses against longtime rival Cole, Michael Elgin, Tommaso Ciampa, Warbeard Hansen, and even a successful defense against a returning Samoa Joe. Shortly after dropping the title to Jay Lethal, Jay Briscoe headed back to the ROH tag division with brother Mark, where dem boys can still be found bending bones today. Number 9, Takeshi Morishima. Takeshi Morishima was an absolute beast, a huge final boss character that made the ROH title scene a legitimately dangerous place when he held the title in 2007. A mainstay of Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan, Morishima came to ROH as part of a working relationship between the two promotions and instantly set about dismantling the roster, taking the ROH World title off of Homicide in just his 3rd match with the company. Morishima proceeded to absolutely batter everyone in ROH, smacking people in the face with the force of a freight train or dropping them flush on their head with little regard for their well-being. Morishima dispatched Adam Pearce, Claudio Castagnoli, BJ Whitmer, and others with relative ease, while successfully defending the ROH title in Noah against the likes of Kenta. His wars with Daniel Bryan only increased the fear factor around the terrifying teddy bear, with the big lad notoriously detaching Danielson's retina with a fierce punch to the face. Such dominance dominant displays as well as the defenses in Noah made Morishima a big deal in ROH, and fans were wondering who would topple him for the title, if indeed anyone could. Eventually, that honor fell to Nigel McGuinness, who despite being swatted by Morishima several times before, overcame all odds to end Takeshi's bruising reign at 231 days. Number 8, Austin Aries. While the greatest man that ever lived might not be the nicest man that ever lived, you cannot deny his ability. The first ever two-time ROH champion, Aries was one of ROH's brightest stars, a man capable of pulling an excellent match out of seemingly anyone. Austin's first reign as ROH champ came in 2005, where he was the man to finally topple Samoa Joe, a huge deal, let me tell you. This first reign was pretty good, with excellent defenses against Colt Cabana, Homicide, and Bryan Danielson, amongst others. Aries' second reign, though, was something truly special. Defeating champion Jerry Lynn and Tyler Black in a three-way dance in 2009, Aries was at the top of his game as the smarmy dickhead you just wish would get his moustache kicked off. While some will argue that Tyler Black should have won instead of Aries, few had any doubts that Austin's reign would be incredible. The douchey A-double defeated anyone who stepped to him, putting on superb bouts with Davey Richards and Kenny Omega on subsequent nights, to name but two. He was truly the man ROH fans loved to hate, with every dispatched foe only fueling their disdain. Delirious Colt Cabana and Petey Williams all tried him and failed, but eventually after 245 days, Tyler Black finally laid Aries' title reign to rest. Number 7, CM Punk. At only 55 days, CM Punk's Ring of Honor World title reign is one of the shortest in company history, but so monumental and excellent was it that you just have to say Summer of Punk to ROH diehards and they lose their minds. One of Ring of Honor's early standouts, Punk had come close to ROH Gold several times but never sealed the deal, including a trilogy of incredible matches against Samoa Joe. His performances earned rave reviews across the industry, and soon WWE came a-knockin'. Punk accepted a developmental deal, and on his supposed last night in ROH, he took on world champ Austin Aries at Death Before Dishonor 3 and won. Punk instantly became the most hated person in ROH, treating the fans, his co-workers, and the ROH title like they were beneath him, going so far as to sign his WWE deal on the belt itself as the crowd looked like they were about to riot. When Punk did put the title on the line, he would do everything in his power to win, while constantly berating everyone and everything around him. The fans knew Punk had to drop the title due to his WWE deal, and it made every defense more exciting. He beat James Gibson, Roderick Strong, and Jay Lethal, and took Christopher Daniels to a 60-minute draw. Then finally at Redemption in August 2005, Punk lost the title in a Four Corners elimination match and soon made his way to WWE. Number 6, Kevin Steen. Kill, Steen, kill. After a few years in the tag division with El Generico, the lovable Kevin Steen snapped and became one of the most vicious heels in the entire company. His blood feud with Generico elevated them both to the top of ROH, but Steen soon lost a loser leaves town match and was gone for a good while. On his return, Steen quickly made enemies of head booker Jim Cornette, both in kayfabe and real life, and became ROH's answer to Steve Austin, before he borrowed the stunner. The fans got behind the anti-authority Steen in a massive way, and when he finally beat Davey Richards for the ROH title at Border Wars, it cemented him as the hottest act in the company. While Davey was an incredible champion, there was always a feeling that he was ROH's choice as the guy, as the fans made it loud and clear that Steen was their man. Despite the groundswell of support, Steen formed scum with Steve Corino and Jimmy Jacobs and brought a wave of chaos upon Ring of Honor. As champ, he defeated old foes El Generico and Jay Lethal, spitting at Lethal's parents, and defeated several opponents hand-picked by Cornette, such as Rhino and Eddie Kingston. A true blood and guts champ who overcame backstage nonsense to become a shining light through some of ROH's darkest days, Steen dropped the belt to Jay Briscoe after 328 days as champion. Number 5, Adam Cole. It's no accident that Adam Cole's run as Big Bad NXT champion was gold. He'd had plenty of practice in Ring of Honor, where he is the only 3-time world champion in company history. Joining the company in 2009, aged 20, Cole worked his way up the card, winning the TV title by the time he was just 23. After Jay Briscoe vacated the world title, and with several high-profile stars departing, Cole won the strap in a tournament and became the new face of ROH for about 10 seconds, until he blindsided former champ Jay Briscoe and Michael Elgin. Cole's second reign was mainly used to build up the inevitable Kyle O'Reilly title showdown, but was great in its own right, with Cole scalping and humiliating Jay Lethal before taking the title off of him. His defenses across all three reigns were fantastic, defeating luminaries Chris Hero, Jay Lethal, Tommaso Ciampa, and many, many more. Smarmy and X-rated, Cole on his day is truly one of the most detestable heels on the planet, telling people to S his D, then booting their jaw into the 5th row, and with the ROH title, he was on top of his game. Whether flanked by the Kingdom in his first reign or by Bullet Club during his second and third reigns, Cole was a must-see attraction, fans craving the moment he would finally get his comeuppance. Baby. Number 4, Jay Lethal. With 707 days as champion across 2 reigns, Jay Lethal is the longest reigning world champion in Ring of Honor history. Learning from the best as Samoa Joe's protege in the early 2000s, it wasn't until Lethal re-emerged in Ring of Honor in 2011 that he was pushed hard in the singles division, becoming the longest reigning television champion ever. During Lethal's second run as TV champion, he became a double champion, defeating world champion Jay Briscoe in a winner-takes-all match at Best in the World 2015. Lethal was a workhorse and a true traveling champion. He defended the title across America in ROH, in Japan for New Japan, and in England for PCW, Rev Pro, and WCPW. Lethal eventually wound up on the wrong side of Bullet Club, who recruited Adam Cole and beat the ever-loving piss out of him and Colt Cabana at Global Wars 2016. Cole would eventually end Lethal's reign at 427 days, the 4th longest single reign in title history. Lethal would then have a second run in 2018, defeating Dalton Castle on ROH Wrestling TV before dropping it at the G1 Supercard 280 days later. The only downside to Lethal's reigns was so-so booking and, during his second reign, a lack of quality opponents to face, as seemingly every Ring of Honor star ever were contracted to Titan Sports. Still, let it not detract from Lethal's performances. You do not hold any belt for over 700 days unless you are a phenomenal competitor. Number 3, Bryan Danielson. To many fans, the American Dragon Bryan Danielson is Ring of Honor personified. A once-in-a-generation performer, Danielson has been regarded as one of the best wrestlers on the planet since breaking out in ROH in 2002. An incredible technical talent, Danielson's ability was unquestionable, but all he needed was an opening to cement himself as ROH's top guy. When top stars CM Punk and Samoa Joe left town, it was Dragon's turn to shine, defeating James Gibson for the ROH World title in September 2005. As champion, Danielson elevated Ring of Honor to the next level. 60-minute bouts were commonplace, and there wasn't a wrestler alive who Danielson couldn't create magic with. His defenses against Kenta and Roderick Strong were legendary, and his brutal unification match for the ROH Pure title against Nigel McGuinness in Liverpool proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was the best in the world. It wasn't just Danielson's in-ring work which was much-see though, as even from a character standpoint, Dragon was money. Whether the hard-working babyface or the heel with a proclivity for kicking heads in and admonishing referees about 5 counts, Danielson was the complete package. Challenged by Colt Cabana, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Naomichi Marufuji, even Lance Storm, Danielson put on blinders with all of them, and by the time he dropped the belt to Homicide after 462 days, Ring of Honor was certified as the must-see indie promotion on the planet. Number 2, Nigel McGuinness. Long before his days on NXT's commentary team, Nigel McGuinness was one of Ring of Honor's most celebrated sons, breaking jaws and putting on incredible matches left, right, and center. The longest reigning ROH Pure champion, it was Nigel's time with the Pure belt that made people take notice of him, feuding with ROH World Champion Bryan Danielson and smacking people with a Union Jack bedecked iron just because he could. After coming up second best in his feud with Danielson, McGuinness unsuccessfully turned his attention to GHC champion Naomichi Marufuji of Pro Wrestling Noah and feuded with Chris Hero and Jimmy Rave. Eventually, Nigel came face to face with the dominant Takeshi Morishima, getting the stuffing knocked out of him several times before finally toppling the ROH champion at Undeniable 2007 to a monster pop. McGuinness defended the title against anyone and everyone and had a hell of a heel turn during his run when fans turned their back on him. He defeated a who's who of Ring of Honor: Danielson, Tyler Black, Kevin Steen, Steen, El Generico, Austin Aries, the list is endless. A mammoth title run at 545 days, 38 defenses, and a whole host of injuries, McGuinness dropped the title to Jerry Lynn in 2009 before departing Ring of Honor a few months later. McGuinness as champ was everything you would expect a world champion to be: confident, dominant, and a man who made it his mission to put on the best match of the night every single time he stepped foot in the squared circle, even if it came at a cost. Number 1, Samoa Joe. When Samoa Joe won the Ring of Honor title, the wrestling world took notice. Whereas before the ROH title had been seen as a decent belt in a promising indie promotion, Joe turned it into a legitimate world title, defending it anywhere against anyone, giving it prestige and getting a lot of eyes on ROH in the process. At 645 days, Joe's reign is the third longest major world title reign in American wrestling since Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan in 1984, only behind Dan Severn and Nick Aldis's NWA championship runs, which is quite frankly ridiculous when you think about it. Joe took the belt to England, New Japan, IWA Mid-South, PWG, and any promotion that could book him. Let's be honest, 98% of you watching this have seen a Samoa Joe match. You know just how good he is. Quite simply, Joe was ROH's ace, their main draw, and the reason we're even talking about them today. His technique, a mixture of brutal strikes, MMA-like submissions, and pure technical prowess, summed up Ring of Honor, and has seen Joe become a featured player no matter where he wrestled. In his 21 months as champion, the Samoan submission machine put on clinics with Homicide, Christopher Daniels, and Bryan Danielson, but it was the trilogy of wars with CM Punk that put Ring of Honor on the map. Joe prevailed, and these matches are still regarded as some of the finest in Ring of Honor history. When Joe finally dropped the belt to Austin Aries, the title had been elevated beyond what most ROH fans ever believed possible.